All right, let's dive into something kind of special today. We're going to be talking about Arcane, the animated series. It's been blowing up lately, and surprisingly, even people who've never touched League of Legends, the game it's based on, are loving it. We're using this super interesting video essay as our guide today, and it makes a pretty strong case that Arcane is straight up groundbreaking. So we're going to break down exactly why.
Yeah, the essayist kicks things off by praising how well Arcane builds its world. Especially impressive, they say, is how it manages to cater to hardcore fans and folks who are totally new to this whole thing all at the same time.
Okay, but a ton of fantasy shows these days have all this crazy lore. So what makes Arcane different?
It's all in how they work those details into the story,
It
you
is.
know? It doesn't feel like an info dump. The world feels real, like it's been lived in. Kigzon, the Undercity, for example. We learn about this huge flood that happened when they were building a canal. And that disaster, it created this simmering resentment, towards Piltover, that rich city up above.
Right.
And then there's Janna. She's this almost mythical figure. Her wind magic saved a bunch of people during that flood. You see these monuments to her all over Zon, like symbols of hope in this dark, struggling place. So it's not just backstory. It's like adding this layer of mythology and depth, emotional depth.
I see. I see. It's like those details ground the fantastical parts and make you really feel the history of it all.
Exactly. And this attention to detail, it works for both kinds of viewers, which is so smart. Fans of the game get those aha moments when they recognize things from the lore, while newcomers, they just experience a world that feels incredibly rich and thought out. Win-win.
I like that. So you can jump into Arcane without knowing a thing about League of Legends and still get swept up in the whole world.
Absolutely. Speaking of getting swept up, let's talk about the characters. The essayist makes a point of saying how Arcane avoids those simple hero versus villain tropes. Even the supporting characters, they're not just there for show. They have depth, and their motivations actually make sense.
Yeah, but that kind of feels like a cliche now, doesn't it? Every show these days tries to make their villains sympathetic.
True, but Arcane goes deeper than just giving them sad backstories. Look at Silco, for example. He's one of the main antagonists. And yeah, he's done some awful things, but it all comes from this fierce love for Jinx, his adopted daughter. He wants to protect Zon, even if it means getting violent.
That actually reminds me of something I was arguing with a friend about. He sees Silco as just pure evil, but I kind of get him. Like he's a tragic figure twisted by all the stuff that's happened. Do you think it's possible to sympathize with someone like Silco, even if you don't agree with what he does?
That's the genius of the writing, right? They make you confront those questions. You have to deal with that moral ambiguity. And it's not just Silco. Almost every character pairing in Arcane has this dynamic of clashing beliefs. Vander, who is Silco's friend way back, believed in making peace with Piltover. That created this huge ideological clash, and it's a big part of the conflict. Even Jace, this idealistic inventor, he butts heads with his mentor, Heimerdinger, over how fast technology should advance.
So it's like the series is saying there isn't always one right answer.
Exactly. The essayist compares it to this misconception that Archduke Ferdinand's assassination single-handedly caused World War I. Like, it was way more complicated than that. It was a catalyst, yeah, but it was the result of decades of these tangled political tensions. Arcane does something similar. It avoids those simplistic cause and effect storylines by layering all these different motivations and conflicts. That's what makes the story feel so real and nuanced.
Okay, starting to see why this show has everyone hooked. The characters, the world, it all feels so well thought out. But the essayist also goes into some pretty deep philosophical stuff too, right?
Right. One of the big themes revolves around Victor. He's a brilliant scientist obsessed with this thing called hex tech. Basically, it's like magic mixed with tech. Super powerful, but also kind of dangerous.
So like, could this amazing tech solve all their problems or will it just create new ones?
Exactly. And that's what Victor gets caught up in. At one point, he even says, if you solve all the equations, the remainder will be zero. He's saying that all the imperfections, all the challenges we face, they're actually essential to what makes us human.
Wow. So he's saying that a perfect world, a world without problems, might actually be a bad thing.
It definitely makes you think, right? And the essayist brings up Notes from the Underground by Dostoevsky to drive that point home. The book explores how absolute rationality and getting rid of suffering might actually lead to this feeling of emptiness.
Man, that's deep stuff. Makes you think, doesn't it? Like, are we so busy trying to fix everything that we forget to, I don't know, appreciate all the messy, imperfect stuff that makes us human?
That's what Arcane really gets you thinking about. And they don't shy away from showing that visually either. Remember that scene where Jinx is in that perfect looking world, but she's totally lost, like she doesn't belong?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a visual representation of that whole dilemma.
It's like, be careful what you wish for.
Huh.
Right. Maybe a world without problems wouldn't actually make us happy. But, okay, enough philosophy for now. Can we talk about how amazing this show looks? I mean, the essayist goes on and on about the animation, and for good reason.
It's not just about being pretty, though.
Yeah.
Arcane uses its animation style to, like, really enhance the storytelling. They do some clever things.
Yeah.
The essayist mentions they used over 30 different drawing techniques in the series, which is crazy.
30. Seriously. It's like they hired every animator in the world.
Well, it shows how dedicated they were to, pushing the boundaries of what animation can do. And it's not just the number of styles, it's how they use them to fit the story. Like, remember that music video sequence where the animation shifts, goes from that fluid, almost comic book style to this static single panel thing and then back again.
Oh, yeah. That was cool. How the style matched the music, the tone of it, and the story they were telling at that moment.
Exactly. It shows how much thought they put into every little thing. The visuals aren't just there to look cool, they add to the story. They even play with the technical stuff, like frames per second, to get specific effect.
Oh, yeah, like in that dance scene with Echo and Jinx.
Mhm.
It felt so jarring, so unsettling, and it totally matched how tense things were.
Right. The essayist says they purposely lowered the frames per second in that scene to create that choppy, almost disorienting effect, which reflects Echo's unease in that moment. It's not just pretty pictures, it's using animation to make you feel something, really immerse you in the story.
So they're mixing all these styles, playing with the technical stuff. So are you saying like every frame of this show is a masterpiece?
Well, the essayists actually did this fun experiment. They took random frames from Arcane and saw how many would work as desktop wallpapers.
Okay, I'm listening. What happened?
For season 1, 10 out of 10 frames they picked were good enough to be desktop wallpapers. And get this, for season 2, 47 out of 50.
Wow, that's impressive. No wonder people are obsessed with how it looks. It's like every shot's a work of art. But speaking of art, we can't forget about the music. Arcane has a killer soundtrack, and it's not just background noise either.
Totally. They got some big names involved. Imagine Dragons, Sting, Woodkid to make these incredible tracks. But what's really cool is how the music is woven into the story. Like it underscores the emotions, the themes of each scene.
Yeah, it's like the music becomes another character, Like, remember that scene where Jinx tries to, the song playing during that scene, the lyrics were heartbreaking, perfectly captured that feeling of despair, like there's no hope left. I endured as long as I could. I became strong every day of my life. This world is a wasteland where nothing grows. I had strength, but I lost hope. Maybe death is like falling asleep.
So powerful. And it's not just the sad moments. They use music to highlight every emotional beat. Think about that dance sequence with Echo and Jinx again. The lyrics actually mirror their relationship, All complicated and messy. You are both my enemy and my love, and I want to go. I also want to stay. Keep your friends close and your enemies even closer.
Yeah, it's like the lyrics get to the core of their whole struggle, that love-hate thing they've got going on. And when you combine those lyrics with the visuals, the animation style, it creates this intense layered experience.
Mm.
Okay, let's get back to something we touched on earlier, symbolism. The essayist claims Arcane is packed with little details and hidden meanings. But is it all intentional, or are people reading into things?
That's the big question, right? Some of it's pretty obvious, like the Black Rose dungeon is literally shaped like a black rose. But then there are those subtler things, like the owl mask. At first, it might not seem like much, but owls are one of the few birds that can see the color blue, so suddenly it takes on a whole new meaning.
Is that supposed to connect to something specific in the story? Or is it more like a thematic thing?
It's open to interpretation, which is what makes it so interesting. Some people might see it as a hint about a character's hidden motives, while others might interpret it as like a broader statement about perception, being able to see things that others miss.
So it's like they're rewarding you for paying attention, for really digging into the story.
Okay, I'm starting to get why some fans might be going a little overboard with the whole symbolism thing. But even without all that, there's no denying Arcane does some really groundbreaking stuff with its characters.
Right. The essayist points out that there are no clear-cut good guys and bad guys in this show. Even Silco, who does some truly monstrous things, ultimately loves his daughter and wants to protect his people.
And Jinx. I mean, despite all the madness and the violence, she's still a character you can sympathize with. We understand her pain, her trauma, that struggle to make peace with her past. It's like that quote from the series, people who read say that they do not believe in only good or bad people. Arcane embodies that idea, showing how complicated and nuanced people really are.
It's like a reminder that good and evil aren't always so black and white. There's a lot of gray area, and that's what makes things interesting.
And that complexity is what makes the story so engaging. We get why the characters do what they do, even if we don't agree with their actions. We see their struggles, their pain, their victories. It's that emotional depth that really pulls you in.
So it's more than just a cool action fantasy show. Arcane is using these characters to explore deeper themes about being human, about morality, the choices we make.
And the essayist makes this interesting point about storytelling itself. They say that storytelling is like fundamental to the human experience. It's how we make sense of the world and connect with each other.
So in a way, by watching Arcane, we're not just being entertained. We're tapping into something essential about what it means to be human. We're exploring these universal themes of love, loss, betrayal, ambition that struggle to find our place in the world.
Exactly. And that's why it resonates with so many people.
Okay, I'm really starting to see why this show is being hailed as a turning point for animation. It's not just a visually stunning spectacle. It's using those visuals to tell this complex and moving story. A story that tackles mature themes and makes us ask some tough questions.
Right. Arcane isn't just telling a story, it's examining the human condition. It challenges our ideas about good and evil, and it pushes the boundaries of what animation can do, both visually and thematically.
And the essayist believes that Arcane might be more than just a great show. It can be this huge moment in the evolution of animation as a storytelling medium. But is that really true? Does Arcane actually redefine what animation can achieve? I guess that's the question we're hoping you'll think about as we wrap up this deep dive into Arcane. Has it, set a new bar for animation, not just visually, but in how it handles these mature themes and creates such well-developed characters?
It definitely feels like a game changer, yeah. The essayist actually argues that part of the reason Arcane has gotten so much praise is, well, a lot of viewers haven't seen a ton of animation, so they're just blown away by what they're seeing.
But they also make it clear that Arcane is objectively doing some things really, really well, right? It's not just people being easily impressed.
Exactly. They acknowledge that, but they emphasize that Arcane stands on its own. The storytelling is ambitious, the animation is beautiful, the characters have depth. It's hard to argue that this isn't something special.
And one thing that really struck me is how Arcane connects with so many different people. You don't have to be a gamer to get into it. I mean, I've got friends who've never even heard of League of Legends,
Yeah.
and they're totally hooked on Arcane.
It speaks to its universal appeal, right? It goes beyond just being a video game adaptation. It's a story about family, ambition, betrayal, finding your place in a world that's changing. Those are themes that everyone can relate to, no matter who they are.
Maybe that's the most groundbreaking thing about Arcane. It's not just telling a great story, it's changing how people see animation. It's showing everyone that animation isn't just for kids or for superhero movies. It can be this powerful way to explore complex stories and mature themes.
It's proving that animation can be just as nuanced and thought-provoking as any live-action movie or show. And who knows? Maybe Arcane's success will open the door for more animated projects that are this ambitious and innovative.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about the possibilities. If Arcane can be this successful, both with critics and audiences, maybe it'll inspire a whole new wave of animators and storytellers to push things even further.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with some questions to think about. Did Arcane change how you see animation? Did it leave you wanting more? Did it make you think differently about the world, about technology, about what it means to be human?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell us what you think about Arcane, and let's keep this conversation going. Because as we've seen, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Arcane is more than just a cool show. It's a phenomenon, something that's sparking these important conversations about art, about storytelling, and about the power of animation to move us, to challenge us, and to help us see the world in new ways.
And that, my friends, wraps up our deep dive into the world of Arcane. We hope you enjoyed exploring this amazing series with us. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep those questions coming, and keep the conversation going.